Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Movie Pit Podcast. I am your host, Christian Renteria, and it is officially spooky season. Well, it has been spooky season, really, but it means that we are going to talk about some horror and/or horror-adjacent movies here on the podcast. Last year, I think I did a full month. September kind of snuck up on me, so it's really just going to be spooky weeks here on the podcast, but nonetheless, spooky season will continue on here on the Movie Pit Podcast, and it's time for this episode for another DCOM rewatch. And DCOM, for those uninitiated, is Disney Channel original movie. And because it's spooky season, what better rewatch to do than with a movie with Halloween in the title, and that is Halloweentown. Disney Channel's fourth original movie after Under Wraps, which was its first movie and also kind of played a part in why Halloweentown was made and why it became a DCOM in general. We'll get to that in a second. You Lucky Dog and Brink, and then Halloweentown came, and appropriately, it came on October 17th, 1998. So let's flash back all the way to there and talk about this. And this is, of course, the second DCOM we've talked about here on the podcast. I don't know if it was last year. It might have been 2 years ago. Time is not my friend anymore. But we talked about Don't Look Under the Bed on the rewatch. So we have talked about DCOMs in the past. Halloweentown was directed by Dwayne Dunham. And he was no slouch. He directed a few episodes of hit shows at the time, like Twin Peaks, Jag, and Seventh Heaven. Movie-wise, he had done Homeward Bound, The Incredible Journey, which I think is the first movie, and then Little Giants. And then he went on to do this. He would become a go-to director for Disney Channel for their movies, so there's a good chance somewhere down the line we will talk more about Dunham in the future. A little tease there for what could be coming on the Movie Pit, but not this year, probably next year, but little tease. So anyway, little backstory. So originally, this was going to premiere on NBC. Now, there was a deal back in the day between NBC and Disney where they would, switch off movies or they would make movies for the other network. And there was a deal between the studios and the producers, and they greenlit it for NBC and got a writer in Paul Birnbaum, who ironically named the kids in the movie after his own kids. So it's a nice little way for their kids his kids to live on in their own way. But the why am I mentioning this is because NBC passed on the movie after getting the script, because originally the script was much more geared toward adult audiences. So it wasn't as kid / family friendly as it was going to be and as it became. However, when they passed on it, the producers then took it to Disney, and they passed on it originally, but they went back to the writer and because they only had the writer at the time. And the producers, after they saw the success of Under Wraps, their first DCOM movie, which did really well, TV ratings wise and with fans and audiences alike. So Disney decided to get them back, and they asked them, the producers and the writers, to gear it more towards kids, because they wanted it, of course, to be part of their Disney Channel original movies, which they did, and here we are. We got the first movie of Halloweentown in the books. It ended up becoming a series of movies, rather, kind of, I don't want to say, franchise, because it's more than 3 movies. It's 4 movies, but we don't really talk about that last one. But who knew passing on a movie and then getting them back was going to play such a big factor in this. So the movie begins on Halloween. It actually takes place entirely on Halloween. In a neighborhood, kids are out trick-or-treating, but there's one house that they won't go to. No, it's not haunted. It's not abandoned. It's a house that just doesn't have any decorations and does not celebrate Halloween. That's where we, the audience, are going, and we see a little girl, Sophie, looking out the window, looking at everyone else having fun, and then we meet Marnie, who is arguing with her mother that she wants to go to a Halloween party because if she doesn't, she'll be a freak, and she... as we learn throughout the movie, is very, very in tune with Halloween. She loves Halloween very much, probably like a lot of people out there as well. But she is the pinnacle of what a fan of Halloween is. And her mother, named Gwen, headstrong, says no, does the typical kind of parent in these kinds of movies where there's a secret, and we the audience know there's a secret, but the characters don't know there's a secret. So she's telling her no because there are things she doesn't understand, and that she will tell her when she's older, which Marnie doesn't like, and she immediately pretty much sees her mom as a buzzkill, kind of lame-o kind of character, right? We then get introduced to the little brother, Dylan, the middle child, if you will, played by Zoe Zimmerman, who is the nerdy, equally kind of buzzkill little brother who's brings logic to a lot of everyday conversation. And I never really liked the character when I was younger, when I watched this movie, and it didn't really change on rewatch. I mean, he is the typical kind of, antagonistic, skeptic force within the hero group that we see in, horror and horror adjacent movies. So he fills that role, and he does it very, very well. So well that you maybe don't like him. But even though, as well, there comes a point where he's looking straight into the storm, if you will, into seeing all these monsters and stuff, and he still doesn't believe it. He thinks he's in a dream, or he thinks he's lost his mind, and I think he brings up genetics at one point or something. I don't know. Anyway, back to the action. Sophie feels someone is coming and says as much, and they kind of just pass it off like, she's weird. She's the youngest. She's the youngest. She sees stuff. It's Halloween, whatever. Even though literally in the next scene, it is the mom, it is Sophie, they're in the kitchen, and Sophie sees a plate of cookies, right? Typical kind of movie thing where you just see a plate of cookies. And she's about to grab one, and the mom says, no, you can't have any. You can have one after dinner. Sophie's like, it's not going to ruin my dinner, the typical kid thing. And the mom says no. She takes the plate away. She turns around. Sophie turns around, and Sophie's kind of, having a little moment where she's like, she really wants the cookie, and, she's saying it to herself. She's not saying it out loud. And then the cookie starts to float in the air, and it starts to move closer to Sophie. And then the mom sees it, and she grabs it, and she puts it in her mouth before Sophie turns around and tells Sophie, to go get ready for dinner. Our first real kind of glimpse of magic in the movie, if you will, knowing that something is going on with the movie. And then we meet Debbie Reynolds. Debbie Reynolds, of course, famed actress, iconic actress, even at this point. She plays the grandmother of the family, Agatha Cromwell, and she comes into town on a flying bus that no one sees, even though there are people literally just passing by where the magic bus stop is. Whatever, it's fine. But she plays the fun grandmother, what comes in with the Halloween decorations, costumes, candy. She's the eccentric grandmother, the grandmother that they all love and care about and everything. And they know that she doesn't come into town very often. That there's rules for that because the window, the portal, if you will, between the human world and Halloween is, very limited. So obviously Halloween is one of the only times she can really come over. Anyway, we can immediately tell, even when she visits, that she is obviously also magical. She has a bag that follows her around. But you can tell that something may be off a little bit. So, we have this nice, kind of family moments. And then the kids are going to sleep, and Agatha is telling them about a bedtime story and talking about Halloweentown. And, where, monsters and ghouls and ghosts and everything, they all live in harmony. And they all live together. And she pulls out a book. And in the book, there's a picture of a witch, and they say it looks like Marnie, which agree to disagree. But they say it looks like her, and Marnie's like, it is me. And then, the grandmother's like trying to kind of egg her on a little bit. And Marnie's like, oh, there's nothing special about me. And Agatha starts to be like, oh, you are special. You're a Cromwell. And she starts telling about these, great line of powerful and witches and everything. And then the mother comes in, and I don't think she says witches, but she's talking. I think she's getting at that point. But then the mother comes in and says, hey, you guys got to go to bed. Me and your grandmother need to talk. So Gwen and Agatha go in the kitchen. Agatha kind of lays it all out and says, something's going wrong in Halloweentown, and I need help. and I need your help because you are a Cromwell witch after all, and the only thing that can probably stop the evil that is going on in Halloweentown is Cromwell magic. And the mom says no. And she's like, okay, well, let's talk about Marnie then. Because Marnie is 13, or she's going to turn 13. And the rule kind of established in the movie is that by 13, you probably should already have your witch training done. That's kind of what it said, and that's kind of what it implied. And Marnie hasn't had that because the mom wants her kids to grow up normal. Obviously, she lives in the mortal world. She has a late husband that was mortal, human, and she wanted to stay there because she wanted her kids to have a normal life. She didn't want them to grow up in Halloweentown. She stayed in Halloweentown, or to stay in Halloweentown rather. So, and it kind of leads to this kind of little argument and conversation. And during all this, Marnie comes down and she hears all this. She hears that she is a witch and that, her grandmother's in trouble, and Marnie goes upstairs to tell Dylan, which I don't know why, because Dylan has already shown that he has zero interest in anything Halloween related, supernatural related, anything like that. And Dylan's like, no, you're crazy. And Marnie's like, okay, fine. I'm going to go follow grandma and I'm going to prove you wrong. So they both go and they follow her, and then they see the magic bus stop and they see the bus coming down, and they sneak on it somehow without nobody noticing. And it transports them through a portal, and when they're in the portal, they finally see who's on the bus. It's not just a grandmother, it's monsters. It's like these two other witches. There's like a Frankenstein monster talking to like this, I don't know, like goblin or something. I don't know. Couldn't really tell what it was. But they finally land in Halloweentown, and they see it just like it was in the book. It's, monsters everywhere, all living in harmony, all living like, kind of like us, like humans do. And then they see a giant jack-o'-lantern in the town square that will play a factor in the movie later. But they're not the only ones that made the trip, because guess who else made the trip? Sophie. How? Because that's my question. How? Because there was no way. She was like, oh, I snuck on the bus with you guys. And no, there was no time for her to sneak in. She's not a ninja. She's small, yes, but she is not a ninja, and she sneaks into the bus somehow. Anyway, whatever. It's fine. All three kids are in Halloweentown. They're trying to, they lose their grandmother in the crowd, and they're like, oh, we don't know what to do. And then they meet this kind of very cheery guy, very kind of old-timey almost in a way. And he says he is the mayor of the town. He is Calabar. His name is Calabar, with a K. And for a second, he's like, oh, you guys are new at town. Like, I don't know who you guys are, and I should know everybody. I'm the mayor. And they tell him, who they are. And he's like, oh, you're Agatha's kids. Oh, but you're Agatha's grandkids, but you're also Gwen's kids. And she gets all like love struck. You can see it. You can see in this. He's like, oh my God, like I haven't seen her in so long. But, they tell her that that she's not with them. And they're like, all right, well, I'll take you to your grandmother. And he calls for a cab, and it's Benny the cab driver, who is this animatronic. He was a robot. There was no CGI to him, which was actually pretty cool. And the fact they were able to do that for a TV movie like this, especially at the time. And he makes I didn't know this at the time, and I never caught this until now. He makes an Into the Woods joke. And I never knew that. I mean, I wasn't a musical kid, so I didn't really know anything. I didn't know about Into the Woods until I was very much older. And we were watching this, it was kind of a nice little hint at it. I was like, oh, okay, I see what you did there. That was actually kind of funny. I kind of chuckled to myself a little bit on that one. So the kids get to the grandmother's house, right? It's padlocked on the outside. And Marnie, being, wanting to prove herself and wanting to be like, oh, I'm a witch, so I can immediately use my powers without any training or practice. She decides to, quote unquote, practice her powers on the padlock, and it doesn't work. It's very embarrassing. It's also very embarrassing to watch. And then her and Dylan have a little bit of an argument, and they have their backs turned to Sophie. And Sophie, we don't see Sophie do anything, but the door suddenly opens, and they're like, Sophie, how did you do it? She's like, oh, I just pushed it. And then when they're walking away, she stays behind. She's like, I also wished for the padlock to become a toad. Camera pans down. The lock is now a toad, and it goes away. So immediately we know that Sophie is, a powerful witch. And I will get to that much, much later. All this During all this, Agatha is in her kitchen. She's creating something using boxed witch's brew, which I thought was very funny, and puts it in a mini cauldron and then puts it in the microwave. And another bit that I found very funny, she presses bubble, toil, and trouble. There's buttons on her microwave that said bubble, toil, and trouble, and she presses bubble, and toil, and trouble buttons, which I thought was very funny. And then, just like Sophie sensed at the beginning of the movie, she's like, someone's coming. And then here come, in the windows, here comes, the kids. And they all come in, have a nice little moment. And Agatha's like, I got to take you kids back. Like, if I don't take you guys back, your mom's going to freak out and you'll be stuck here. I don't think she tells them they'll be stuck there, but she kind of knows the rules. Like, you need to go back to your world. And I need to take you back, before midnight. And Marnie's like, that's in 2 hours. And Agatha's like, oh, no, not really, because time here in Halloweentown works differently. 2 hours in the mortal world can be days, weeks, months here in Halloweentown. So nice little cop-out, because Halloweentown is always sunny. It is complete sun every single time that we see the movie. It's not even it's the only time we see even a little bit of forecast in the movie is near the end, and that's kind of when the final act starts. But it is always sunny. So, the kid's wondering, like, what's going on. Agatha kind of she's like, oh, I sense someone was in the kitchen. Marnie tells her that, they're there to help her with whatever's going on. And Agatha pulls out a talisman, which is kind of like a little staff with like a little bulb at the top. They keep calling it a talisman, even though I think my definition of talisman is very different from the talisman that they do in the movie. Anyway, they have like this it's like a spear, not a spear, but like a kind of like a, I don't know, like a torch lantern. I don't know. Anyway, whatever it is. They call it a talisman. We'll just call it a talisman. And it's a talisman of Merlin. And supposedly this was used to stop the dark times in the human world when, those were going on. And Agatha was like, I can use this to potentially stop what's happening, what's going on here in Halloweentown, because I think it's kind of the same thing. And she uses the witch's brew that she made in her microwave, and it doesn't work. And she's like, that's what I get for using boxed witch's brew, which I, again, found very funny. So she's like, okay, we'll make it from scratch. Let's go out to the store. Let's get the ingredients, and, I can show you kids around Halloweentown, and then I can take you guys home afterwards. They're like, okay. So they go in the town. Marnie looks at her first broom, which she buys her first broom. And during this, we also have a meeting between Agatha and Calabar, which it's looking back at it now, it's like, yeah, okay, I see it. I see the twist of what's going to come, and that probably gives it away what you guys are going to know. But yeah, it's not very much. It's not very well kept when you watch it. Even if you're watching this again, it's like, oh no, that's fairly obvious what's going on. Anyway, so Marnie buys her first broom. They take a ride on it. Her and Agatha, Marnie and Agatha take a ride on it, which was actually the last, I think, if I read correctly, that was the last thing they shot, which I think is pretty cool. They also meet a punk kid named Luke, a punk kid, quote unquote punk kid Luke, who's in town. He's kind of like the bad kid in town, and he's like, I guess he's supposed to be like a troll or a goblin or something, and then he got like surgery or something, or like he met a shadow monster, and no one believes him in town. It's like, okay, yeah, whatever, shadow monster. But he supposedly knows this powerful being, and it made him, not a monster anymore. So that's why he looks very human, when everyone else looks not as human. So they run into the kid, and, they have, an incident or whatever. But then when they're like, okay, like, let's go back to the house and, or let's take another ride. Now it's Sophie's turn, and then the mom shows up, and mom's like, absolutely not. And that's when they see mom, and that's when the kids know they're in trouble. And, the mom goes in, and Marnie's like, I want to stay here. Mom's like, no, you cannot stay here. You belong in the mortal world. You belong with me. And it's, kind of a sad scene because the kids had to say goodbye to grandma, and grandma's, really upset, and the grandma's all alone again. But when they try to get a bus back to the mortal world, little comedic bit here. There's like two guys that are connected together, and they're very much, they share the same body and everything. And one of them is drinking coffee or espresso, and he's like, why are you doing this? So it's a comedic bit. But they tell the mom, like, the bus is late. You got to wait. Like, it will get here when it gets here. They're like, okay. And Dylan, being the narc, the little narc that he is, he's like, well, we met the mayor. Maybe he can help out. Of course, Marnie not being happy with that kind of hits him. And that's where they go. And we get a scene with Calabar and Gwen together. And they are super flirty. Like, real flirty in this scene. And, Gwen's like, I just want to get my kids home. And Calabar's like, all right. It's like, oh, something came up. I got to go deal with this. But when I'm done with this, I'll help you out. And I'll take you back home. Very, very flirty. And like the kids know, and like it's funny, like they're teenagers. They're like, "What's going on?" They're like, "I don't know." So, but they're very much flirting with each other. During this, Agatha is walking the streets, meets up with Luke, and Luke is like, "I know you're alone, and I know you want to deal with this monster and deal with him." And Agatha's like, "How do you know that?" And Luke is like, "I know you have the talisman." How does he know they have the talisman? I don't know, but whatever. They're like, if you want to meet him, all he wants is the talisman. That's all he wants. Meet with him, give him the talisman, he'll leave you alone. You can end it, maybe. And Agatha's like, okay. And they walk over to an abandoned theater that we had seen earlier in the movie. And Sophie sees it through the window, and she tells them, and Marnie and Dylan and everybody, they're like, oh, we got to go, help Grandma. And they go and help her. So Agatha gets in. It's an old movie theater with seats full of people that have gone missing from the town and are stuck there, and like spider webs all over them. It looks pretty cool. It's a very, very cool and decent, creepy set piece for the movie. And the shadow monster appears, and in a very, very not great CG looking tornado in the theater, but whatever. And Agatha confronts the shadow monster and says, the monster says, you can't stop me, and starts firing these projectiles at her, but she's dodging him. And we notice, I don't know where I was going with that. We notice that Luke ain't down with that plan. He is very much like, this wasn't, he doesn't say this is part of the plan, but you can tell that this was not part of the plan. He didn't know that the shadow monster was going to do this. And the family comes in, and Gwen comes in, and Gwen, the mom comes in, and she uses this spell, and it, pokes, like, it's a nice little funny line. It like covers Luke in like flowers, and she says that, her magic didn't work, or it did work, but not just the way she intended. And it's a nice little comedic gag. But Gwen gets there, she saves her mom from the shadow monster, she gets hit with the projectile, and then Agatha gets hit by the projectile, and the kids are freaking out. Luke is gone at this point. And the kids, are going to run out. And Marnie's like, no, we got to help them. And Dylan, probably the only sensible line he says is like, how are we going to help them if, we get caught too? So they escape, and Marnie looks back, and Agatha tells her that they're going to be fine. It's just a freeze spell or whatever wording she used, that they'll be fine. Just go. And they leave. And the kids get outside. They notice that the shadow monster isn't following them because the light affected it, which makes no sense later on, but we'll get to that point. And Marnie says that they have to finish the talisman, and they need the ingredients, and she remembered them. So here we start a montage of them going around the town to get the ingredients. They need a hair of a werewolf, which they get at a beauty salon, because that's where the werewolf works. They need the sweat of a ghost, which they find, I'm assuming, the local Halloweentown YMCA. There's this whole scene of like older monsters doing like jazzercise, like aerobics kind of. And the scene lasts lasts for a good bit. And I think it was probably just to show off like the makeup, I guess. But yeah, like that scene lasted a little bit longer than I thought it would have, and remember it lasting longer than I thought it did. But they get the sweat of the ghost, because he's in the sweat box, and they turn up the steam, and again, it's another little funny bit there. The vampire tooth, which they also needed, they get at a dentist, because the dentist in Halloweentown is, of course, the Tooth Fairy. And there's this quick little scene with them, and like the dentist says, like, you're not going to feel a thing, and they pull the vampire tooth out, and it's a female vampire. She's like, I didn't feel a thing. He's like, oh, well, I'm the Tooth Fairy. Of course you wouldn't feel anything. So yeah, there they go. So the kids get everything. They're trying to get back to their grandmother's house, but they run into Benny. And Benny's a lot more darker. He's not, saying many funny lines. And then at one point he grabs Dylan and is kind of forcing him to come with them. and not in, the, like, I'm trying to save you way, in the, I'm trying to hurt you way. And at this point we see Sophie with like a dog. There's just some random dog on, like a little post in the square, and she lets the dog go, and then, Chase is bending down the street. So the kids get back to Agatha's house. They finish the talisman. They get it to light up and turn on. And again, we see that Sophie is very much capable of being a very powerful witch, even though she has no training. And they go back to the square because, like, we got to save them. And then that's when they notice, when they're there, that the shadow monster comes out, again, in broad daylight. So the whole, the light doesn't affect it thing, I don't know why. I guess they just needed a reason to get the kids out of the theater, and they couldn't find a valuable one where the kids, where the shadow monster couldn't go and chase them. So the shadow monster's there, and he's giving this speech to the whole town. The town's like, well, what's going on? And then he starts talking, and, he's like, we've been here long enough. We need to go conquer the mortal world. So, they need to be afraid of us again. And then he's like, I can lead the way because, surprise, the shadow monster is actually Calabar. He reveals himself, and, Gone is the charming, cheery, guy that we have seen. And he goes into full-blown villain mode. He's like really enunciating his words, and he's doing like this. That is kind of how he's just talking. So he's a very over-the-top kind of I don't want to say vaudeville kind of villain. I don't know why I put vaudeville in my notes, because that's not what I'm intended to say. I think I put that in as a placeholder. But he just, this very kind of over-the-top villain. And the crazy part is that when he's talking, there are some monsters that are like, oh yeah, no, he's right. They're like nodding along, and they're like, yeah, let's go do it. And then Marnie runs, or we think it's Marnie, because at this point, Luke has pulled Marnie aside because Marnie's going to go to the jack-o'-lantern to put the talisman in, because she remembered that her grandmother said, like, the jack-o'-lantern is like, the beacon of our magic here in Halloweentown. And she's going to go to it, and Luke pulls her aside. And Luke tells her, like, I didn't know that, he was going to do that to your grandmother. That was not part of the plan. Like, he even fooled me. So off screen, they come up with a plan, because before Marnie left her grandmother's house, she kind of took her grandmother's jacket or cloak or whatever it's supposed to be. And we see the cloak running, and Calabar's like, you can't stop me, because he thinks it's Marnie, and he attacks her. He throws like one of those projectiles at her, and it turns out to be Luke. And Marnie is right there at the jack-o'-lantern, and she gets hit with it, and you think it's over. And that Calabar's like, see, like, no, the Cromwell witches are not so, big and bad. Like, I can stop them. And that's when the townspeople are like, I don't know about that anymore. Like, you just attack some kids. Like, I'm not comfortable with this anymore. And they're not, kind of turning against them. Marnie, in the meantime, manages to shake it off, whatever it is. We get like little, flashbacks and like a voiceover of like, lines in the past, or lines from the, movie beforehand. And she drops the talisman, and it lands, in the jack-o'-lantern perfectly, and it spreads, it stops it. It stops whatever hold the people in the movie theater had, or that Calabar had over the people in the movie theater, including Marnie, the kids' mom, and her grandmother, Agatha and Gwen. And they come out, and they go out, and they're like, you're done, Calabar. You can't stop us all. And Calabar's like, I don't think so. And like, he uses magic to grab the talisman somehow from the jack-o'-lantern. And he's like, you can't stop me now that I have this. And Dylan at this point, he's like, man, if I can just get my hands on him. And he starts showing, signs that he's a warlock or a wizard or whatever. I think they use warlock. That's the terminology they use. And Dylan's like, no, I'm the normal one. And, he's still in denial, which, again, we need that kind of person in this movie, but a little annoying. Anyway, so the family comes together, they defeat Calabar, he disappears, just like from a flash of light from the talisman. Halloweentown is saved, right? Gwen then agrees to train Marnie when they get back home to the mortal world. And she tells her that her grandmother needs to come stay with them now, because that's just how it works. Like, she's going to need help training Marnie. She's probably going to need help training everyone else, and they're like, okay, I'll go with you. And then they all get in the bus that suddenly appears out of nowhere, and they all leave, and we get credits. That's it. That's Halloweentown for you guys. So post rewatch thoughts. Originally, the post rewatch thoughts and also a little trivia here for you. Originally, the movie had a different ending. Instead of ending that we got, there was an original ending that they had written down and they were starting to work on. So apparently it had Marnie having to walk through an enchanted forest to place the talisman somewhere in the forest instead of the jack-o'-lantern in the center of town. And Marnie, as she progressed further and further into the forest, was going to age a lot. And they even did the face mold of it, and they found out when they were doing the face mold and doing the makeup and everything that they had changed the ending, and they basically rewrote the whole thing. So, and I guess another nice little piece of trivia, they let Kimberly J. Brown, who plays Marnie, keep the face mold, which apparently she still has. Post rewatch thoughts now. It wasn't until this rewatch that it really hit me, and I've been saying it throughout the episode a little bit. Sophie is clearly the more talented one of the group. They don't even mention training Sophie at the end. They mention training Marnie, not even Sophie, even though Sophie is clearly more qualified and has showed that she has the abilities to become a witch, and without any training whatsoever. So besides the multiple examples that we get, there is a little line. I think I might have mentioned it, but I'll mention it again. There's a line in passing when Marnie and Dylan are talking before they go and follow their grandmother to the bus stop. Marnie's like, don't you ever wonder why Sophie, when she throws a tantrum, that things start flying off the shelf? And Dylan's like, no. So again, she clearly is the more powerful witch, even for her age, with no training whatsoever. And the series literally does nothing with it. They don't even make it like a sibling rivalry. They don't even have a villain where it's like, hey, Sophie, you're the more better witch. You're better than your sister. Or even try tricking her into working with the villain. Nothing. There is nothing more. Sophie literally, after the second movie, which I had to go back and watch because I forgot what they do with her character. But I remember they don't do very much with her character still. It is still very much a Marnie storyline, which, again, I don't, she's the older one. That's fine. Whatever. But Sophie literally becomes a nothing character. In the third movie, which we won't talk about, I don't think, in this podcast at any point besides now, the kids are in high school. So I think she literally has one scene or one or two scenes, and it's very short, and then she disappears. And she's not even in the fourth one, which it makes sense because, the kids are in high school and she's not, because she's supposed to be, younger. That's fine, whatever. And then the fourth one, which we will definitely not talk about, I don't even think she's in it, at all. I don't even think they mention her. I haven't seen the fourth one in a very long time, since it came out, but they don't even mention her at all. So, she becomes a nothing character, so why make her so strong if she's not gonna do anything for you or the movie whatsoever? And part of that may have been the actress, Emily Roski. I think that's how you pronounce her last name. I apologize if it's not. She's played Sophie in the first three movies, even in the very one and done scene in part 3. And besides the Halloweentown movies, she appeared in one episode of ER and then a small role in another movie. And then she retired from acting. She, was doing her own thing. I think from what I read, she's doing she has a martial arts school in Arizona. So she lives a very nice, happy life. So, maybe she just didn't want to act anymore, or maybe, she was obviously still young enough to not pitch anything to the writers, but the possibilities of this rewatch are you could just think of anything that you can do with Sophie character, and they do nothing with it. So that's just whatever. Let's talk about the practical effects. Obviously, this movie is filled with creatures and, everything else. And for the most part, a lot of stuff is supposed to be over the top and stuff, and whimsy, and that makes sense, which is fine. And it works for the movie, especially at this time. And some of the makeup that they have in the movie, it holds up pretty well. You can tell what's actually makeup and what is just clearly a mask, because you can tell a lot of it is just mask and some of it is makeup, but you can tell that they they either didn't have enough time or didn't have enough money, because you can tell like certain places are cut off. Like especially like with the during the aerobic scene, like they had this very, very like good and like awesome makeup on their face, but they don't do anything below the neck. So it's a very human neck and a very human body with like this great makeup on their face. And it's just like, it's frustrating. It's like, maybe I've been watching too much of the Face Off reality competition from years ago, because I started rewatching that. So if you want to see like a good like makeup show, like Hollywood makeup show and special effects, like practical effects rather, go try to find Face Off. It was on Sci-Fi. It was a competition show. It was great. It was really fun. I started rewatching it. So like anytime now, especially now when I was watching this, I was like, oh, like you can kind of see edges there, or like, why didn't you just bring it down more? Like, it's just, I don't know. Maybe that was that. But I thought, for the stuff that was there, like the practical stuff, like the makeup and stuff was great. Some stuff was clearly just a mask that they put on, which is fine, but it still looked pretty great. Special effects, the actual special effects I mentioned, very dated. It's a 90s TV movie for Disney Channel. I don't blame them. So the special effects are just, whatever now. There are lines of dialogue in here that, even though, yes, I just mentioned it is a 90s TV Disney movie, that is hard to hear. Hard to hear, hard to watch, and to say it with such a straight face. I don't blame them. It was the 90s. It was fine. But like you watch it now and you're like, oh my God, like someone had to say that with a straight face. But whatever. I had not watched Halloweentown in its entirety in a while. And it was nice to kind of just sit and watch it again and kind of get the memories of watching it as a kid back. So I'm not bummed that I watched it. It's still, for what it is, and knowing what it is, it still holds up pretty well. For what it is. If it's your thing and you want to, relive your childhood a little bit and get some memories back, start watching, watch Halloweentown. I think it was worthwhile. Okay. And that's it. Thank you everybody for listening. This is only the second DCOM movie that I've talked about. Again, I did an episode of Don't Look Under the Bed, which I'm not completely proud of that episode. That episode it's a little rough. It's a little rough to listen to back now. But if you want to go hear my thoughts on that, you can. Like I mentioned earlier, I have a feeling that we will be talking more DCOMs in the future, not just the spooky season ones, maybe some other ones, but that we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Thank you very much for listening to this episode again, wherever you're listening to, whatever platform you're listening to. Make sure to also check out all the other links, which, the socials, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, all that good stuff. And yeah, that's it. Thank you guys so much. Continue to have a very good spooky season. We got another episode lined up. I still want to do another episode. I have a space where I can do another episode, and I just don't know what to do yet. I want to do something, but I just don't know what it is yet. But I will figure it out. Hopefully I will figure it out, and we'll drop that episode. So thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast this week. I very much appreciate it. Once again, be good people, be safe, and I will see you guys on the next episode.